Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan,
I'm Drew.
and welcome back to Nifilmsism. Today, we are honored to have our first third mic, my friend John. John, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so today, because we are all talentless hacks, we are going to be talking about horror movies because I looked at the calendar and it's October. We kind of wanted to talk today about just where the genre has been in the last few years. Specifically, wanted to get into the question of whether or not it has totally devolved into nothing but jump scares and cheap horror.
And CGI Jaws. Just jaw distension.
Oh, I think you meant the shark.
Creepy. No.
No.
Based on what Back to the Future 2, we're already past when Jaws, what was it, 3 or 7 was supposed to come out?
Well past. But, it's funny that you should mention that, too, because Jaws being one of the seminal horror movies out there, Jaws did so well precisely because, don't get me wrong, it had jump scares. It had the guy whose face floated out from the side of the boat, and you never saw that coming. I've seen that movie a ton of times, and you never expect it. I always forget about that part. So it's not like it never used jump scares, but it kept the threat away, almost Cloverfield-like.
And all because their animatronic shark just didn't work well enough. So it was just like, oh, what do? Do we scuttle the film? No, you just literally keep it unknown, which makes it more terrifying.
All right, before we keep going, I guess we should just sort of define horror because a lot of stuff falls into this category. I was watching another YouTube video a while back. I think it was on Vsauce, and he referenced Stephen King and Stephen King's 3 types of scares. So you've got gross out horror. You've got actual horror, which is something supernatural. I guess you'd put vampires, things like that into there. And then you've got terror, which is stuff that taps into ambiguity and the fact that we as humans don't really do well when we're not really sure what's going on. And that gets into almost things like...
so kind of more like instinctual response read.
Yeah, and things like The Ring. We knew with The Ring, oh, you're going to die a week after this. You know intellectually that's impossible, but that mental ambiguity of not knowing because that week hasn't elapsed is kind of where the whole scare of that comes from.
Yeah, and then whereas just that by that definition, horror is kind of just the unknown or unfathomable, almost inconceivable to a degree, where it's just something that you could tell on just eye test or sense test that it's like that's not real, it's not normal,
but it straddles that line.
Yeah.
That being said. I guess what sparked this whole thing was the realization that there's another Saw movie coming out. There was just another Annabelle movie that came out. And I can't really say that I'm all that hopeful for the genre. I mean, even some of the newer stuff, like It Follows, as good as it was, certainly isn't going to go down in the pantheon of all-time great horror movies. And I'm a little worried that it's just become, how did you put it, Drew? Just cheap thrills for date night?
It's that goes in with just, it does seem like they're made more often now for just, you see them a lot come out in, like, February now. Like, around Valentine's Day, when there's really that real dead period before, like, the late April, early May beginning of the true movie season. You see a lot of, like, the really cheap, crappy, like, Steadicam paranormal crap, like...
We're gonna do this from a computer screen.
Yeah, like, and the new one, Unfriended or something about Facebook. Oh my god, like, that can't be high budget. That can't be high cost, but, like, that stuff typically comes out, like, in these weird stretches before the Thanksgiving to Christmas boom, and then before the holiday boom, because it's, like, usually they're cheaper to produce, and you're going to get people in because the trailer will scare people, because it'll have a jump scare, it'll have a loud noise. It's like Pavlovian.
So I guess we should back up. I mean, I invited John on today because he got me really into the horror genre. I hadn't really been into it until, John, you got me into all the Romero stuff.
Yeah.
This is going back almost 20 years now. Mm-hmm. We had mentioned, actually, your tattoo last time. You've got bub on your leg. I'll open this up to you guys. Are we past the point of horror movies taking on social issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I haven't really seen any that really have done that since. Romero was obviously the big one, but...
Rest in peace.
Yes. Not a lot. I mean, I could be wrong, I'm sure. There's at least been one horror movie after Romero has made some kind of social commentary. I have not seen it. I'm not going to say I've seen every horror movie, but yeah, I just feel like they're not, like kind of Drew said, it's evolving into jump scares and not trying to tell stories anymore.
Well, I mean, even stuff like The Purge, which would you consider that horror?
Absolutely.
You guys consider that a horror genre thing?
I would say the first one definitely. Just because you're in a very confined, claustrophobic house.
Yeah, because it's very micro at that point.
Yeah.
It's just one family, and then of course people want bigger and better, so every movie gets
The second
larger
one
scale.
was, I'd say, more of almost like a Running Man kind of vibe.
Oh yeah. Would Running Man count as horror? It's definitely it's Schwarzenegger action, but
I'd say suspense, almost like a chase movie.
Because do you think it's that to a degree that the difference between suspense and horror is the sense of the protagonist having the ability to fight back, like being actually capable? Because most suspense I feel like that I've seen is either like intellectual suspense, like political thriller type stuff, or it's something where like Arnold's literally able to fight anybody in that movie, and that's like you don't really get that sense of like, oh, he's actually helpless here. Whereas like in a horror movie that's suspenseful, like it's more like it's like kids. Or it's like somebody who's somehow because of the way the plot's written, not suited for this situation.
Or Eli Roth, that hack has
Zack Snyder level hack rod
has someone tied to a chair, and you've seen Hostel, right?
Yeah, I've seen the first one.
I mean, what
I did like Cabin Fever. I did like his first movie.
I did too,
and I appreciate what he's trying to do for the genre. I didn't particularly care for the Hostel movie. I didn't hate it. I did not see Green Inferno yet because I feel like he's just trying to gross you out with that and not really trying to make a horror movie. But I guess it's like, that feeling of helplessness in a foreign place. You don't know what's going on.
Well, like, as a fan of the horror genre, what did you think about, like, because I feel like it's a genre that we could say, like, oh, it's on, like, the deathbed, but, like, I feel like even from the outside, you see certain things that come out that people are like, this is kind of like the paddles to the chest. And I feel like what was it, like the early 2000s when Rob Zombie decided to start directing stuff, that kind of jump started stuff like, what was it, Devil's Rejects? Like a lot of people are like, that's a good movie, and like this is a guy who gets the genre and what we like about the genre.
Yeah, Rob Zombie's a two-headed coin for me as far as horror goes. I haven't seen 31, but I did like House of a Thousand Corpses. I did like Devil's Rejects. His take on Halloween, wasn't really a huge fan.
Well, he went more into the backstory of Michael Myers.
And I thought this one kind of killed it.
Is it just a case of the original is good and it's like you don't need to like?
I would like to see remakes like that because it does bring it to a newer audience that might not have seen the originals or might not have the desire to. Because the original one definitely is definitely a product of the time, product of the 70s, and a new one would make it more modernized. I didn't like that. All the backstory and all the exposition on why Michael Myers became this, deranged serial killer. The first one didn't need that. They just described him as a force of nature. And that's the scariest part because when you have a fucked up childhood like that, and you show his mom and stuff like that, you're not really...
It makes him borderline... It makes him borderline sympathetic, which is not...
This is why I won't see the new Ridley Scott prequels to Alien, because it just ruins what makes the xenomorph scary, and it's the fact that you don't fucking know what they are, and now you know what they are, and it's like, okay, now that just sours everything because you kind of see that.
I liked the idea of where Prometheus was going.
I kind of feel like in some cases horror villains should be like a hot dog. You don't need to know what goes into them, just know that it's good. Like, I just like the hot dog. I don't need to know what like lips and shit went into this thing.
I don't know. I got mixed feelings on it because it tried beat for beat, at least with the newest one, Covenant, to try to replicate the first Alien movie beat for beat, almost to a letter. You had not Ripley running through a spaceship and then blowing an alien out the airlock at the end of it. But the first half of that, when they tried to get a little more Ridley Scott-ish. Ridley Scott Oscar. Yes, thank you. They went back almost to, we were talking about Blade Runner earlier, but that whole, the plot of the first one, and I think they went back to, he went back to, hey, we want to try to meet our maker, to ask for more time, and that's just something that Ridley Scott is kind of obsessed with. But it took away it never worked as a horror movie. It never worked as an art house philosophy movie. There were parts of it that I liked in both of them, but it didn't end up working just as a cohesive whole.
Back to what John was saying though about likable remakes, like, do you think that's a sign that the genre is hurting? That it's more going back to the well and bringing back stuff than creating anything really truly original?
Yeah, because I mean, it is kind of hard now. I mean, it's been going on for so long in horror movies, you know, that you start out with the Universal monsters, Dracula, Wolfman stuff, and you've kind of gone on from there. But it's kind of like the things. I guess people are just kind of reaching now. Like, where do you go from here? It's kind of hard to come up with new ideas. But that's not saying anybody shouldn't try. I mean, remakes have their place. Some of them do well, some of them don't. I did not care for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Friday the 13th was okay.
Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I liked it.
I liked it for what it was. I felt like some of that could have been different. Some of the lines were just kind of hokey, like when they're going to seek shelter and they're going to the mall, and the main characters looks at the like, we're going to the mall. Like, you couldn't have said that any differently. Yeah. And I know it means something different. Romero's a take on consumerism, and this one's just you're going to seek shelter. This one didn't really try to tell anything else. And I also will go on record saying I think running zombies are fucking stupid. I hate running zombies. I mean, the Zack Snyder one, sure, I get it. It's making something, terrifying that you can't really outrun. But that's why I've always liked to segue into, like, I hate running zombies. If you just think of the anatomy in general, if something's dead and it comes back to life, probably not going to have a whole lot of vigor. It's going to be rotting. The muscles aren't going to be really working too well. And the whole thing that Romero initially intended with that was, you can run, they can't. But
they're always going to be there. The inevitability,
essentially. You're just running from the inevitable, which was always a cool concept. Just prolonging your fate.
Well, the thing though, even talking about that, like, say you don't like the Snyder, it's essentially like a reboot remake. It kind of just apes off the name, but it's like, I've kind of made it in the past just a comment in this podcast about the prequels of Star Wars being like a barrier of entry. In that it's like kids aren't gonna want to watch a movie that at the point we're gonna want to get them into the series, that like Star Wars is gonna be like a 50, 60-year-old movie at that point. Yeah. Are they gonna want to watch a hokey 60-year-old movie? No, they might want to watch a colorful one that actually like looks realistic to them, and that might get them into watching that. And that's kind of how like you might see Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, where it's like, oh, it's more action packed and it's new, and it's like, what other movies are like this? And then you somehow happen on like Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and then you get to see like, oh, there's actually like a trilogy of these movies, or a quad if you want to count Land. But five.
Diary.
Diary kind of feels like it's this alternate universe, though.
Diary was actually supposed to be a reboot of Night. From what I was told, they're redoing Night because Diary is supposed to take the same time frame that the first Night of the Living Dead. Like, you're watching Diary as the zombie apocalypse is beginning. And I'm not saying that, like what Drew said, I'm not saying that I hated the Zack Snyder one.
But if it gets people if it wedges the foot in the door of this is an ode to this guy's movies, that's might be what you need sometimes.
This is something I touched on with Ryan too the other day, is that I feel like when you do a remake or a reboot, to me that, and again this is my opinion, don't take this the wrong way, that I feel like saying reboot remake is you're saying the first one was in some way flawed, and that needs to be fixed. And that's just my opinion. I understand people like Zack Snyder and people who do these remakes do it with good intentions, but that's just the way I take it. I'm very stubborn Polak, so that's just how I am.
No, I mean, yeah, because you could be like, somebody could have seen that, like say we're going back then, somebody could have seen like, oh, look at this cool like zombie movie's coming out. It feels like it's been a while since we got one of those, and then they like watched a clip of Dawn, and they're like, look at that stupid shitty ketchup blood. It's like, that's Tom Savini's work. Like, yeah. Don't shit on that man's work. Like, do you know what the budget for that movie was? It was like, you probably picked their whole budget to get the Monroeville Mall like closed for shooting. Like, yeah. Like, respect what they were able to do, and it's just, I don't know. Like, but to a degree, like, if it takes a remake of something that, like, as a fan of the genre is beloved, but like it takes out some of what somebody coming in new would think is hokey. Like, oh, look at how crappy that blood is. But like, hey, we did a remake where everything looks like as realistic as movie realistic looks. Like, and it gets them scared and like interested. That might be worth it.
Yeah, true.
So last, what, 2017? Yeah.
What year? Years don't matter.
What year is this? In the last, let's call it 15, 17 years. I mean, have we had any horror movies that were... I mean, there's a lot of art house ones out there. There's a lot of ones that people, that if anyone actually ever listens to this damn thing, the comment section will blow up. But what about It Follows? And what about...
that's clever, yeah.
Someone's going to say The Babadook, and I'm going to tell them that they're wrong.
Or like The Witch.
I haven't seen The Witch. It's on my short list. I've heard that everyone hates it, so I'll probably end up liking it. It's supposed to be boring, so I will love it.
What I've seen of it is that it's boring and that it's in colonial English, so it's like hard to follow understanding wise, which is like commitment to period, which to me is just like, now I'm intrigued because I won't be able to follow this, and people who are dumber than me are like, this is trash.
If we're gonna go back, let's even surround it to say 2000s and current, like what horror movies have stood out. The one that keeps popping into my head, and this is one that we mentioned yesterday, is Cabin in the Woods.
As an outsider, before you get on your roll, as an outsider, the idea of that movie is awesome to me.
No, it's a good movie. It's one that I wish I had seen in theaters, but the previews were so badly edited, you couldn't tell what the hell was going on. Like, you're seeing kids in the woods, and there's zombies, and now there's scientists. And there's no reason why the scientists are there. And then it happened to be on my Netflix queue the one day, and I watched it, and it was actually a really good homage to the horror genre.
So, interestingly enough, a modern movie that adhered to the old standard that has been lost with previews of not showing everything hurt the movie.
It did, because it just seemed like it was so disjointed. Like, you can see trailers in the 70s and 80s of Friday the 13th, of Night of the Living Dead, and stuff like that, and see there's something spectral force or some outside killer, and it makes sense. But in the context of that, when you're cutting into that many different clips that seem very disjointed, when you're not knowing what's going on, it does take away from it. But I do like what the movie tried to convey, because it did, explain all the horror tropes. Why the black guy dies first, why if you have sex on camera you die, and all these things. And I thought it was a very well done movie that didn't take itself too seriously, and I thought it really worked out well.
There are homages that get too caught up in being an homage and don't bother being a movie on their own, and I feel that this one actually hit all the strides perfectly.
Yeah, this had everything. This had horror, this had suspense, it had action, it had like Lovecraft references with the elder gods at the end. And comedy when one of the scientists got ripped apart by the fucking merman. That was hilarious. Have you seen this movie?
No, I've seen the CinemaSins on it, and I just love the idea of like you see the outside and you see that they have like an office pool and stuff like that. Like that aspect, like just the idea of like we know what's tired, what seems to outsiders tired about our genre, or even fans of our genre, and like we're gonna kind of poke fun at that, but also still make it a horror movie. Like it's not a comedy movie. Like of making fun of horror movies, like a scary movie type. It's just, but I don't know. I think it's a clever thing that I don't know if you could do with any other genre. Like I don't know if you could do that kind of like meta film on like political thriller genre. Like I don't think you could do it without it being something that is as ingrained in American culture at this point as like slasher horror.
Yeah, without turning into scary movie.
Yeah.
At this point, does anybody actually remember Scream versus what Scary Movie did to Scream? Because I rewatched part of Scream not too long ago. I got the last half of it on cable, and it was actually a good horror movie.
No, it was really well done.
And it was one of the first original ideas to come out that was the 90s. It invented a whole new iconic horror villain with just that mask.
Yeah, and the funny thing was the whole movie was essentially making fun of horror movies, and it scared the shit out of you.
It's almost like the Robert Downey Jr. Oscar bait in Tropic Thunder.
Yes.
That he almost got an Oscar for.
Yeah.
Because Scream's kind of like it's not really fourth wall breaking, but fourth wall aware. Like, it's aware of, like,
it winks at you.
Yeah, it's aware of, like, like we're gonna swerve you because, like, everything that we've shown you tells you this is where it's going.
Everything, not everything, but a lot of horror tends to be, this was successful, let's go back to the well and see how many teenagers we can get to shell out their parents' money to go and see this. I don't know, it's the Ring.
Yeah, part of the big thing for me is kind of, again, to go back to what Drew said at the beginning, is jump scares are easy. Jump scares don't really take a whole lot of effort. You just kind of throw shit at the screen and see people react. You don't really have that too much thinking now in horror movies. Where, like, my big example, I guess my one example, I would say not my big reveal, would be the original version of John Carpenter's The Fog. There's this fog that sweeps into this coastal town, and there's spirits in there. And they start, slowly killing people in the water. I mean, not in the water, but on boats. And your role as the viewer is you have to figure out, why is this happening? What's going on? And there's a lot of suspense, because I like my horror movies with less is more. That movie didn't have a lot of blood and guts. You saw people get stabbed in the throat. You didn't see blood spray everywhere. But you had to think about what was going on. And then by the end, it's nicely explained to you. So when you find out at the end, and spoiler alert, the pirates got screwed out of a treasure. They're back for revenge to get that treasure. And you find that out by finding doubloons and stuff throughout the movie, and they're going after relatives of people that did it. And that's nicely explained that everything you kind of piece together throughout the movie is explained by the priest at the end. And I feel like that kind of element is lost today.
Speaking of Carpenter, I figured I would just get into, I guess, my top 3, and that brings us back to Carpenter, and it's the same sort of aspect with the first one I want to mention is The Thing. The Thing is probably my favorite horror movie of all time, and it thrives on that whole idea of you don't know what's going on. It's claustrophobic. You don't know who is who. Everyone's seen The Thing now, right? Okay. And like you were saying, people, like we were all saying before this, I don't know if people just don't have the patience, or if they're looking for the instant payoff. And then that brings up the question of, do audiences actually want that slow burn? Or do the studios just think that audiences want all jump scares?
I think it's just, I think horror kind of reflects the sign of the times. I think with everything that we're in now with, social media only having so many characters you can post with, and YouTube video clips being, so many minutes long, and I feel like people don't have the attention span to sit down and actually watch a movie. And I'm not gonna say everybody, so don't feel like I'm singling anybody out or any group out, because I'm sure there's people out there younger than me that can sit down and watch older horror movies too. I just think people don't want to, it's how quickly everything works in this modern time.
And that's a weird catch-22, because you've got two sides to that coin. You've got the fact that, like you were saying, in this day and age, I mean, let's be honest, it's 2017. Things aren't exactly the best globally. So some people may just be looking for escapism. Yeah. Other people may be looking to really sit down and get engaged with an hour and a half, 2 hours of real catharsis, which we should probably change the name of the podcast to.
Is you look at like respected cult movies like the original Wicker Man, and that movie did not do well because it was a slow burn movie, and that was what, the 70s, early 70s. So like you could be like, oh, and people don't have the attention span now, and it's like maybe it's just you gotta think the studios that are producing these movies that are typically, like we've said, coming out in the ebbs, in the low point of the year, are looking to make as much back as they can, and they probably are looking at what can we get the lowest common denominator viewer to recommend this and get other people to come in so that this doesn't lose on us. And that might be why you get quick, like, slap a quick plot together, make sure you've got enough scare action that we could just have somebody spew some exposition at the end, and it just makes it seem tidy. And then they'll come next year for another one. Whereas something like Wicker Man, where it's basically like a long deliberate like what is going on here, what is going on.
You know that there's a problem.
Or like we were talking at work, like can you do Lovecraft? You'd have to have a lot of like looking in books and like kind of just you'd have to have a slow burn story there, and I don't know if that reaches enough people that that have the throwaway money or want to throw away the time to where it's gonna stand up. So that's why, to keep the genre alive, however they can, they're gonna put out quick cheap money makers.
It's not gonna be quick because I again heard rumors, and again don't take anything on the internet seriously, but I heard rumors online that for the longest time Guillermo del Toro wanted to do a Lovecraft. He wanted to do Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, I've heard it's almost like how the saga of Ryan Reynolds getting Deadpool, where it's like, you got to do a bunch of this before we're going to let you even try it.
But the thing about that is, Deadpool is always going to be quick action. Like, if you...
Yeah. I mean like, the sense that, like, he's got on record, like saying, like, I had to do a bunch of movies before they were willing to even give me the rope to try it. And I feel like Del Toro's kind of gotten that, where it's like, you got to do this for us, or you got to kind of scale back how, like, crazy your stuff is.
That's why the studio's kind of shooting it down, is because if you read, Mountains of Madness, it is, like Ryan says, a very slow burn, and I feel like it's not going to hold a lot of people's attention. I feel like that's why the studio hasn't greenlit it yet, is they don't think it's going to be quick enough to catch everybody.
You heard what the nail in the coffin of that one was, right?
No.
If I read this correctly, he was going to do that movie, which, if you're not familiar with the H.P. Lovecraft original source material, involves people finding this ancient civilization buried under the ice of Antarctica. That was around the time that he was working on this that Alien vs. Predator came out, and the idea that they found a civilization under Antarctica was enough for the studios to say, well, we can't do 2 movies with that connection.
We've had Armageddon and Deep Impact. We're not going down that well again.
Yeah. And the closest we ever ended up getting was 6 years before that, maybe, with the Sam Neill movie. In the Mouth of Madness. I think that's the closest we ever really got to true Lovecraftian outside of True Detective Season 1.
Like, could you imagine if somebody, if they were to just have the balls to do, like, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream as, like, a movie?
Who's your
Fitz Allison, but, like, you've got a diversified cast, and you've got a pretty clear, you could do a text crawl at the beginning, like, civilization's gone, this computer runs everything, it fucking hates humans, here's our story. And you could have, like, you could have almost like a Saw-esque scenario, because that's what it is, it's scenarios that torture each person individually based on what they don't like. That could work, but I don't know if I don't know if that's something that's even known to people nowadays.
Probably not. Who's your target audience? It's not like you can play on the nostalgia factor. So we're trying out a new format. We're going to be doing the episodes, at least for a little while, at about a half an hour in length. Then we're going to pause, we're going to get a fresh beer, and then we're going to come back and get a little bit more off topic, keep the discussion going. But as we're reaching that point, I don't want anyone to think that we're disparaging the genre as a whole. You've got some good stuff that's come out. I still think that the end of the original Saw is one of the best twists ever in a movie since Hitchcock, who we haven't even talked about.
That's what this whole topic of this podcast is when you said, there's another Saw movie coming out. And I hate to use Saw as a scapegoat for the horror genre, and again, before anybody freaks out, if you like the Saw movies, that's fine. I have nothing against the Saw movies. I will just say that I feel like Ryan said, the first Saw movie and that twist ending was really revolutionary, or not revolutionary, but groundbreaking for the time, because it was something new in the horror genre that had never been seen before. But I feel like as the movies have gotten on and on and on, and now we're going to Jigsaw later this month, which is, 6, 7, 8? I don't even know what number it is for Saw. I just feel like Saw has lost
it lost its soul.
It lost sight of what it became. It became this deliberate movie with, good pacing, you're guessing every time, to, hey, how can we kill this guy in a crazy way that's going to make people freak out? And again, don't think I'm bashing the Saw movies, because I'm not. I don't think any of us here are.
I am a little.
Okay. Ryan is.
He'll bear the cross.
After about 3, it got to the point where
he'll bear the cross.
It got to the point where almost like Final Destination. First one, great idea, but then it became, how can we inventively kill people? Which it's not quite going into the torture porn, but it's cheap shocks, cheap thrills.
And I think maybe that's something too to think about for horror movies or movies in general, is you don't really see the one and done format anymore. Like, you get one movie that comes out and it's a hit and it's amazing, and then maybe there is a lull, but a couple years later there's a sequel, and I think that's kind of the big hurting point, is that some movies just need to come in, make their mark, and go, and that's it. Something like
Get Out.
Get Out. It follows.
That, like, you don't need something else that's in that world that's the same. Like, come up with a new concept to terrify somebody if you've proven that you're good at it once.
And we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in the after show, but I don't think any of those are quite on the same level as The Shining or any of those upper pantheon. They're all very good movies, but I think that the culture currently is, the tide has gone against doing something inventive, and that's why I always like to vote with my dollars whenever I go to the movie theater. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up the first part of this. If you're listening all the way to the end of this, stay tuned, because in a few more days, maybe next week, I'm going to get out the second part of this conversation, and there will be more to come from there. Thank you, John, for coming on. Drew, as always, it's been fun. For now, we're still just available on YouTube. Once we've got a little bit more of a library going, I will get it onto some of the other formats, but that costs money. And I'm still paying off the computer that I bought to record this fucking thing. So thanks again for listening. Hope to see you soon.